This time of year, as the leaves turn and the winds come and everything gets cold, it's more and more attractive to just be in the house every day and spend more time building, more time doing the things I enjoy. Well, one of the things I always tell people is, well, I don't know how to simplify it, but Karen and I have a lot of interests in life. We like gardening. She likes our doll houses. She likes her dolls. The things I like, the modeling, trains, motorcycles, whatever. But they have a lot of varied interests in life, and somehow it seems like by doing that you get the most out of it. Just not having it all in one, I guess all our eggs, all our doll houses in one basket. You know, Karen's been working on craft projects and all kinds of crazy things lately. She's tied up a lot of my shop time, in fact, and we're gonna get her own workbench very soon. But she's only about a year away from retiring, and at that point in time, we're gonna hopefully change our business to where we do a lot of craft projects, maybe even for money. I don't know. This is just one of many pieces that Karen's refinished from scratch, and what I tend to do, the mirror she's refinished, what I tend to do is at the end of every night, before I go up and run the trains or work on the models or do my email or whatever I do, I look around and I say, geez, just how lucky I am to be married to somebody who shares these interests. Because I know not everybody is as fortunate as I am, but Karen and I really do share quite a bit of the interests in life. And as we start to plan for our joint retirement, or I should say her retirement, I try to think of all the other possibilities of things we could be doing together and that we both enjoy. And the reason I'm belaboring this, even though we're basically a model airplane interest is our primary interest, there's just so many other things in life that fascinate me. Birds happens to be one of them. And doing these antique projects, like this antique stove that we converted into I guess a kitchen table is the right word. So anyway, it's late at night and it's getting dark out there already. And usually this time of day I run the trains for 10 or 15 minutes and then I have some time to go work in the shop. And one thing about our birds, boy, when the weather gets cold, they get hungry. We probably do 50 pounds of seed a week. I fill this feeder up sometimes 5-6 times a day. And they eat right until it gets dark. It's amazing. This is one of the chandeliers we restored in our shower in our home bathroom. This is our private bathroom. And I wanted to just show, this is one of the things Karen restored, and she bought these knobs off the internet. They're authentic knobs. She did the refinish on this a couple videos back. And I don't know whether I'm looking forward to having her in my shop all day or not. She has a lot of talent and a lot of energy. Just one of many projects that we've worked on around the house, and I know the people that subscribe to the videos, there's certainly more to life than model planes, that's for sure. Especially this time of year when it gets cold. You get that cup of coffee going, there's so many things, soup, warm soup, the shop, the trains, the furniture refinishing stuff. It's a nice time of year. We put our fish to sleep for the year. They're basically hibernating now. We won't be feeding them again until March or April. I just think it's a wonderful time of year. I love the leaves falling, the leaves changing. I hate raking the leaves, but boy does it make for some excellent modeling. You get down in that shop and turn the heat on, and it's just a great place to hang out. And boy, what a great way to end a work day. Model railroading is just so relaxing. It's actually almost the opposite of control-line flying, where everything is difficult and you need perfect weather to do it and you need energy. And well, model railroading is a great way to end a day or start a day or just relax. prefer to start a day. 2 slices of cold pizza getting warmed up. That gets your day started, Dad. That and a giant cup of coffee and some birds in the bird feeder. Wow, what a great way to start a day. Pizza for breakfast, pizza for supper, pizza for lunch. Now this is a standard horn in which I soldered the bushing in place, silver soldered it. What I want to do, I want to lay out, because we have the dihedral in here, we need to have if the horn can't be there and it can't be there, we have to get the center line of the arm to be on the center line here before I actually install this and cut the notch. So I want to carefully lay this out and then temporarily put it in place, because the dihedral, the stab dihedral, adds a little element of complexity into this. I think the first thing I need to do is just cut this so I can insert the horn and start figuring out exactly where this, the geometry here is a little tricky. Keep in mind what we want to do. I want to keep the center line right on the center line. Now we need to adjust the length of this notch. The first time you lay one of these out and you see the geometry, how it changes, it makes you crazy. But we're going to have to lay this out very carefully. I took some little pieces of brass, this sheet brass, and just made myself up some little keepers here. What I want to have is that they have no resistance in it at all, and that I can spread these out as far as possible to support the horn, because again, these will be in lucky boxes and they won't offer any support. So I need to really make sure this horn is supported as well as possible. Now I know that's where I want the little braces to end, so I need to connect these 2 dots with a straight line. And that'll be where I have to put the slit and the trailing edge for the horn. And that's the plane, so these will be basically inset right at this point. We want to keep these parallel, of course. Now it took quite a bit of fitting to get this little piece in here and relieve the wire enough, and also have the 2 little braces pressed as far out as possible so this horn can't slide back and forth. Now the next thing I'm going to do is just tack glue this with some thick CA. Just a light tack, and then make sure I have a full rotation. And before I do that, I'll take 1 little drop of grease on each side here, just so this doesn't do the thing we really never enjoy, is having some CA get in here and lock the horn up while we're working on it. Just need just the slightest little bit here, so this, if a little CA works its way in there, it doesn't get locked up. This is just PJ1 that's dried out a little bit. What I do, I spray it on a jar cap and then just let it become wheel bearing grease. We're ready to tack this in now. What I want to do is have these horn supports, so I don't want the horn sliding back and forth. Well, you can see we just tacked it, but I want to make sure I have freedom of movement. And I'll set so I don't want to make these holes any bigger than necessary, so I'll have about 45 degrees up and 45 degrees down when we're done. Now I need to come up with some way of bracing this. Now that this is just a tack joint, I want to make a permanent, like a little horseshoe going around the back here. What I did, I just tack glued on a piece. I wanted to make the equivalent of a little support because you can see where this is going. So I wanted to have a little soft balsa block holding that in place. Made a permanent glue joint there. I'll do the same thing on the other side, and then I'll file these, grind them away. We don't need all that wood up there. I want to get them to blend in with the top and bottom also. See, this is thicken up just a little bit. It looks kind of weird though with that. But that's it. Can't be an A26 without that. Now when you're making a small part like this, it's a lot easier to glue the part in place and then shape it than trying to shape that and glue it in. You usually wind up gluing your finger to the part, your nose or whatever. I tried to get this hardened up with some thin CA, carefully making sure I don't bind up the horn. I'll just do the same thing over here. Get that little horseshoe. Make sure it blends in because the fuselage side is going to ultimately come somewhere here. We haven't even finished the plans for the fuselage yet. This nice smooth, one of these Bud McKnight sanding sticks, a nice smooth one here. Well, that worked out as well as I really could have expected. Harden this balsa up with thin CA. We have a real good range of motion. And I know we already have grease settled in on that area, so that can only get better. Put a little bit of wear and tear in there. Now we need to calculate just how much of a swing this horn is going to have. And this isn't really the best way to do it, but because I need to engineer up the lucky boxes that are going to go in here. Now just to get a rough idea of how wide the lucky box has to be, I can take just a piece of sheeting on here, line it up with the end of the horn, and you can see it looks like about a 64th of an inch, maybe a 32nd. But in this dimension, now the other side, it looks like a total change. The horn is away from the sheeting, and here it comes up into the sheeting. So I think we're going to make it just about an 1/8 inch wide to begin with, and then make a little test piece to see if that's going to be the right thickness. I think this horn swings in and out about an 1/8 of an inch. You know, just going to rough out lucky boxes. These don't have to be real fancy. This is just going to be actually a test to see how wide they have to be.
And the key is to make it as thick as the horn is, so the horn is going to be doing this while the flaps are going up and down. I want to make this a little bit thicker. Keep going a bit, that's going to be plenty. Again, this is not a critical within thousandths of an inch thing. Now what will happen here is I'll probably be able to make these a little thinner. As soon as I make one, then I can use this for a test. I can see just how close these are going to have to be. So now you can see the idea is with that little piece in there, this can then do its motion, its range of motion. And I can, just like making gear blocks, I made one big piece and I can slice off as much as I need to put into the wing. So I just ground this down on the belt sander nice and flat. Because these now I just can slice off. I'm just trying to make sure we still maintain. So what I'm going to do is, because I'm just looking at this and I want to make this a little stronger, I'm going to put another piece of 64th plywood going in this dimension. In fact, thinking of another way to do it, I'm always looking for new ways to do this. Maybe I'll just cut this piece out and then fill that with balsa. Do it that way too.
Now what I did, I made these boxes over and made them a little bit thinner because I realized I didn't need as much swing. You can see how much swing I've built into that box, and that seems to be enough. I ground a little bit of material off a horn too, again because we're trying to make this ultra light. That would be one of our primary objectives here, would be to try to make this a little lighter. Now what I need to do is just estimate roughly where that lucky box is going to go by lining up the tip. You can see I've got to be about a 16th, maybe a little less than a 16th in. So the first thing I'll do is cut this outer rib off, put a little piece on top and bottom of this of balsa so that in essence I can slide this box into the elevator. Then I can adjust, and this is the critical part, get this angle just right, so through the full range of motion I'm not bottoming out one way or another. It's a little complicated. This, when you first do this the first time, you think, whoa, that's really complicated. But then the second or third one you do works very well, and then of course that opens the door to building a lot of semi-scale planes. What we need here is a piece of scrap, because what I want to do, I just want to attach this piece here, and I want the grain going side to side if possible. And what that's going to do, I'm going to put another piece on the other side, and that'll give me a little bit of material to carve a plug out. No matter how many times I do these lucky boxes, each time they just get a little easier because you realize what the constraints are on them. So don't be intimidated. If the first time you do it, it takes time. It took me a long time too. Now the next step is to take this over to the belt sander and just square off all the edges so we have a perfectly square lucky box, and then the last thing would be to put the taper in. We start with, I'm going to clean that out, start with this square. You need to carve in that side airfoil shape, and this will become, if I get it right or get it after several tries,
get a plug in, or plug right into the end of the wing. Famous last words. Because this is a plug-in part, that go out to the thickness of the sheeting. When I get the front, I gotta take a little more off the front. I know where that piece has to end. You can make a little pocket for it here. I like this to be a relatively tight fit, but what I don't want it to do is go open that up. Don't want to leave that little scraps that go inside in there. So now we have a press fit. I need to make a little notch here. This will allow the horn wire to get in there. And now I can position this. Before I glue it in, I want to put it in place with the hinges, go through the whole rotation, and just tack it. Because if it's wrong, I want to be able to cut it and move it just a little bit. Now this has to go through its full rotation without binding. That's a hinge that's clicking there. We have a clicker. Once I know this is exactly where that box has to be, then I can take it apart and put a permanent joint in there. Now the movement is correct. I got this permanently glued in here. I want to make a little cap. This is just to seal it up around the horn. And then we'll put a rib on the end. Small balsa rib. I want to just get the contour of this left in. We have to cut the little notch for the horn wire. The next step is I just glued on a cap here, cut and sand this off. And the only thing left will be to cut the little hole for horn wire. Now that both of them are done, I wanted to mark which was which, of course. Now the last step is to put it all together. Just temporarily just hold the hinges in and do a nice final sanding on all the parts before we put a coat of dope on them. Alright, so we'll final sand it out, and tomorrow we'll be able to start putting some coats of dope on it. Now this morning, before I put any dope on this, I want to get a real accurate weight for my records. It's 51 3/4 grams with all the hinges, the horn, everything ready for dope, just under 52. And that's a lot lighter than the B25 was, but it's a different shape tail in the fact it didn't have the edges and we had reinforcements there. So probably we've got a ½ ounce or so gain over the tail. So we're already looking at 3 ounces on the wing and maybe a half or maybe a little more on the tail. Well, that's starting to really look real positive, and where we want to make the big gain is in the fuselage, of course. this thing with the hinges in place, one of the things that if I'm not careful is getting this edge really nice as the hinges fall out. And I want it to give this, let me see, I'm going to have to hold this a little different way. Getting this edge that we don't have a misjoined part here. It's just a couple of swipes of sandpaper, but I want it to be accurate. I want to have that edge that's a perfect, in other words, one isn't out the 64th from the other.
The unique things that we have that's different than a traditional stunt ship is we want to make sure, and of course in theory it would be perfect, but I want to double check it, of course. I want to make sure that both elevators are in neutral at exactly the same time. Now, one of the ways I can do that is by sighting it from the front. I can put the elevators back in place, and I can sight it from the back. But the real test is I want to make a jig that goes on each side that I can tell, and I'll use that for my alignment where I actually go to put this in the plane, and that'll give me the two neutrals you can't sight right down. They're kind of in a V, so I want to make up a little jig that I can use to ensure that everything is in neutral, or if something is a little bit out, how I can tweak it back to neutral. Not sure exactly how this is going to work, but I just made a rough, what I'll call a jig for lack of a better word. What that allows me to do is measure, once I put the hinges on, I'll have to do it with the hinges, of course. I need some way of ensuring that that's where neutral would be, and I could actually measure it even here, so that both of them are in neutral at the same time. And actually, another way is they both arrive at the same point in up and the same point in down at the same time. So just having a little fixture like this will help my alignment when I actually go to do the alignment, if it needs a little tweak, and I don't think it will, but just in case it does, it's a lot easier to get it perfect now than after it's doped and tissued. Then after it's doped and tissued, we can just check it. I can see here that both of them touch up at exactly the same point, both of them touch down, and when one is in neutral, the other one is in neutral. In fact, probably could show this from the back. What I'm looking for is there's neutral. I can get both of them. I can't. It's just clumsy to get both of them. They both run out of down. They both run into up, and they're both neutral at exactly the. Well, I can fine tune it even more. But for right now, having that little jig, that'll save me a little bit of time, and actually, it's going to make it a little easier now. But I'm going to do get some 600 sandpaper, do a final sand out on everything by hand, because these parts are very delicate right now, and then I want to start getting my 5 coats of clear dope on them. I think it's going to work out just fine. The way this worked out, I wasn't sure exactly how I was going to do that, but just having basically just pieces of scrap from 1-inch block. I'm sure you could make a lot less, could make a lot more elaborate jig, but that one will get us through. And we're ready for the final sand out now. 51 3/4 grams.
I've gotten about 5 years maybe out of this squirrel hair brush, so even though it was expensive, Ed Gallagher gave me this years ago, I've really gotten some good use out of it. Now what I want to do is, I put a little piece into the lucky box, a little piece of wire. I want to very, very carefully get 5 coats of dope on this. If after 3 coats it looks like it's a little spidery or a little fuzzy, I'll defuzz it, but I won't sand it. I want to make sure I get down into little hinge pockets, because this first coat of dope is where you build the bond. I want it to soak right in. And in this case, it doesn't hurt if you put each coat on, let's say, an hour apart, 2 hours apart. It's a relatively nice day out there, so it should soak right in. And then tomorrow we should be able to tissue it. Now if you really were in a rush, for whatever reason, I've done it and then like an hour apart and at the end of the day tissued it, but we're not under any time constraint here, so we're just going to basically kind of take our time and enjoy the trip of the 826. Now, the little post lets me hold it while I get the last little bit. I want to get down in where that horn is going to be. Again, some people get away with 3 coats. I like to do 5, 50-50. In this cold weather or cool weather, an hour apart to dry is fine. And we'll just put these all aside to dry when we're done. Sick of making these parts, and this is just a good example of, while we're waiting for dope to dry, I found another little trick that's worth trying anyway. Mixing half water and half ammonia, giving this 5-10 minutes to dry, giving it an extra little bend, since we're trying to make this out of one piece, or of course we could laminate it. I just never get sick of making these parts. If you knew how many parts I've carved by hand. Now with this is a Spitfire top block, and if you use it from this point on, it's the nobler top block. Just as convenient as can be. Now it's really handy for us in terms of mold making. If you have one balsa top block, this has not only been used for the Spitfires, and for, the nobler, it's exactly the same. We've also done up, and Rich Peabody has used it 4 or 5 times. Several other people have used this on custom designs. And I know Mike Costello has used it on an SV11. So this one carving, now it always splits at the back. You can always glue that together. That's not a problem. But the nice thing about doing these is, every time you do one, you think of that poor tree in Ecuador that didn't have to get cut down, or less of it, not cut down, less of it got cut down. You always want to leave the shell until the day you use it, leave some tape on it, holding it in position. In this case, this piece is going out to Paul Edwards in Tennessee, so we'll write him a little list of instructions. He's building up a nice nobler. Now, the last thing that I learned as a little trick, since I always make them a little bit oversized, the last thing is just squeeze this down. And by tomorrow, we will have a nice part and have saved the cost of a giant block, all that carving and hollowing and all that stuff.
I use these molds, the more I like them. Now I have always found, especially in cold weather, we have a heating vent, and of course the heat is already on. You can see the heat's blowing that part away. Putting it up by some heat really seems to be a good thing in terms of drying out the wood, and if you leave it there 24 hours, once we take that bandage off, trim it and sand it, that should be a real nice part. And while we're doing this, all our dope is drying up on a tail and our silver's drying up on a wing, so we have a lot of good things all happening at the same time here. I remember that from time to time we babysit this bird Freddie, and his name is Freddie Fuqua. Well, today's one of those lucky days. His owner is going down to watch our son graduate from the Marines on Paris Island and going to leave him here for a while. So, of course, Chickie's all excited about that. But in the meantime, we have work to do. Getting ready for Freddie's visit.
Behave when Freddie's here.
And what I wanted to do is clear the deck as much as possible for the time that we have to babysit Freddie. This is one of the things every morning when I get up and have a cup of coffee, come down here, and if I have molds, this is the part I love. And I never get sick of it. And we just have to fix the glue seam in the back, and trim it off. The line is picked up inside from the wire. And once we trim this all off and sand it up, imagine if you've ever carved a nobler turtle deck, you know how much work this is. We just saved probably a whole day, couple of days.
Now, it's always a good idea in this case, the customer's not going to use this immediately, so it will always be best if he can leave this just kind of with some tape holding it together at the right size so it doesn't in time relax. Because once it's installed on a model, then it'll never relax. And once this final trim is done, boy, these permagrit tools. These are really worth having. Final thing, of course, is just a nice little sanding. Boy, I love these parts. Of all the things I've ever been able to use in my own building, not having a carved giant fly. You carve them once, and you're done. And so, all the people that ever used the mold are done. Oh, get away! That bird. Well, later on today, we're going to tissue this up, sand it, and tissue it. But boy, just having that part made, I can't say it enough times. How many times have you had to carve that block, and you try hollowing it out equal like that? It's a big job even for a highly skilled model, and for people with less skill, it just kills them when they go to build a plane if they have to carve that. Thought it was safe to start building the A26. I'm back. It's Freddy. We call him Freddy Fuqua. Come on, Freddy. Come on, show everybody what a nice bird you are. Oh my God, is he a lover? The big problem is I'll be working, sanding up, and I'm going to be tissuing and sanding silver in the next couple days. And he's such a good, he sits up on my shoulder all day. You'd never know he's up there. Until at the end of the day, you look at the back of your shirt and it looks like somebody threw an egg at you. Anyway, Freddy's back. Now, usually here's what happens. And I think this is really funny, see? Chickie's got the big cage. This is Freddy's little cage. And what happens, within an hour or so, Chickie will be in this cage, Freddy will be in that cage. It just takes a little time, and then they'll be sitting on this perch together, playing, hanging out, doing their own thing. It's real. I love this guy. It's really good company. He's really good company. Freddy, you're a good bird. But even Karen likes Freddy. Yeah, we know. You're a good bird, Freddy. Not that good, though. Now, we're at the point with this that we're very ready for the tissue. Got 5 coats of dope on here. I fuzzed it once. When I say fuzz it, I mean just hit it like that. If you sand it and sand off all the dope, well, that didn't do you much good. All I'm trying to do is hit the high spots, get rid of, especially on a joint, get rid of the high spots that I can't feel them. Once you can't feel them, they're done. It's nice if you can do a lot of it with a block and do the final little sanding. This is 400, by the way. Not real critical. We don't want to sand all the dope off. I want to have enough on here that I can tissue it, but I certainly, instead of looking at it, use your bare hand. Dope powders right off. You know it's dry. This, of course, is dry. It's been sitting here. Now, from time to time, for the next 2 weeks or how long it's going to be, I don't know, before she picks Freddy up. In the background, you'll hear this crazy noise. Ah, ah. Well, it's not animal torture. It's just Freddy. This is the normal way he is. So we really love him, though. He's really one of the family. Let me get the phone. Now, that was a very interesting phone call, and I'll share a minute of it with you while I do this little sanding in the hinge pockets and stuff. Many years ago, maybe 15 years ago, it actually was before I met Karen, we were flying up Bradley's, that's how I remember. I can't think of his name, it's Ellie. He calls himself Ellie. He's from Israel, and he's a stunt flyer. And he has called me many times on the phone, and we've talked about, setting up a fuel tank or muffler for a Tiger 60 or whatever, but He's going to be in New York and visit us tomorrow. So I think that's just going to be just a wild visit. I mean, I look at TV and I see people getting killed and blown up in buses, and I'm wondering, where do they fly stunt in Israel? But that's one of the neat things about control line stunt, is you have a group of friends worldwide. It knows no boundary, worldwide, and they all enjoy these airplanes. The thrill of building them, the thrill of flying them, the thrill of competing, and when they're done, the thrill of hanging them in the Spitfire bedroom. So, the thrill of seeing Freddie. I wonder if this guy's going to want to take Freddie back to Israel with him. But hey, I told him he's welcome to come by, and we certainly will try to help him out. I don't know what he's interested in, just seeing our shop, or he's flown my plane actually. So years ago he flew the plane. He flew Tradition, I think, when we were flying in Bradley's, and he was here with a guy from the Netherlands, Hank de Jong, and we all flew each other's planes. Very interesting guy, by the way, so we'll see if that pans out. Anyway, he'll be here on business. He's obviously not coming to see me as a standalone, but combine it with some business, and that'll be pretty cool. Now, just to make this simple, I'm trying to get all the edges, all the corners. This is fuzzed, not sanded, fuzzed. Notice I'm not taking much off, but I'm trying to just kill the joints. Get in the hinge pockets a little bit. Again, the idea is I'm ready for tissue. I want to be able to get the tissue. I don't want the tissue going over the wood joint, and then I'm going to sand through and break through the tissue. So be ready in 10, I'll do the rest off camera. In 10-15 minutes, we'll get the medium weight tissue. We already have the Brodak dope mixed up, and we can get this tissued. This didn't take long. I didn't even get the tail sanded out, and he's bothering Freddie already. He's your brother. You gotta love him. He's your brother. Your big brother, too. Here's the deal. Freddie, say hello to Gracie. Hi, Gracie. Gracie is Bruce Hunt's bird. Hi, Gracie. Hello. Ready to tissue. One of the things I do first, cut all the pieces ahead of time, because what I want to do is tissue one side, flip it, and tissue the other side as soon as possible. So I have the dope ready, 50-50, and this is one of the things where you can make a little mistake. Just put plenty on. Don't try to be cute and get the minimum amount on or anything like that. Get plenty on, and you can see, just soak it right on. There's no reason to try to be cute about it. See, there is plenty on there. Take the tissue. It's wet with Windex, just damp. And then the method I prefer, and I really have had good luck with it over the years, press it right down. Don't fool around. If you have a little wrinkle like this, see we got a little wrinkle up here, you can stretch that right out. Now, trick 2, get plenty of dope on there. Don't fool around trying to put a little tiny amount. The other trick is with an elevator or a flap. Get one side done and flip it and do the other side immediately, as soon as possible. You don't want one side to dry. You run the risk of getting a warp in it if you do that. Now just let me trim this. The trick to this, the trick to doing a flap or an elevator is to get one side done and go right get the other side done as soon as possible. Same thing with an I-beam or a D-tube wing, actually with a foam wing. Look at this. Will you get out of here? Go see your brother. Can't get anything done when you're around here. Get! We have planes to build, Chicky. The Axis powers are overrunning Europe. We need more A-26s. Get. You're going to live with Ken Clapson. That's all there is to it. You're going to be get out of here. I'm not kidding. Now what I do with the hinges, as long as Chicky's not here, is just slit them. I want that tissue holding down. Now, once I have that trimmed, I don't want this side drying out until the other side is dry. And especially on any flap, elevator, to any surface that's prone to warpage. And I'm pressing it down is definitely, just use an old towel. Now, biggest trick going, get the other side done, have the tissue all cut. Hey, get out of here. Go play with Freddie. Chicky, Bomber Command is not in favor of having you help us. Bomber Command doesn't need you. This is why people don't like pets for birds. They're a nuisance. Get! The idea of having one side wet, get right in there, repeat the whole thing the second time. That's your best chance of getting it without any warpage. And once I get this tissue down, then we're going to need 3 to 5 more coats of dope on it. And while we're waiting for this to dry, we'll have obviously have other projects working. In fact, we could look at seeing how that silver is drying up on the wing. That's the advantage of having several projects, is you don't try to rush things. And I really don't enjoy working under some kind of time window. Bomber Command likes to take his time. Whether you're running a railroad or Bomber Command, taking some time is the way to go. Anyway, now if you look down this flap, this elevator, no warpage yet. Now what I want to do, the last thing, is just wet both sides at the same time. So both sides are going to be wet, both sides are going to dry at the same time. And this is really the best little trick there is. And since we'll be doing a stab, well, you do that off camera, that's nothing. Just a flat surface. We'll put some extra little tissue in the center where the glass ends. We don't want the glass and tissue to end exactly the same spot. The last thing is the stab. We'll do that off camera. See you!
Oh man!
My friends from Israel are here. Look at them, and they came to see you. You were coming, and you were going to buy pizza for everybody.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, now we're all going to die of old age waiting. So. Jose's got his carbon fiber plane here to demonstrate how to make a carbon fiber wing. Bada boom, bada boom.
Yeah, right.
And he's got some really nice looking parts here. Oh, Midgley's going to be jealous for it.
And I didn't bring the saber because it wasn't far enough along.
Oh, you sissy.
Saber was real nice though.
Looks good? You're going to be a concourse winner out of VSC?
Wait. Oh, Jose took a picture. That's right. Wait.
At least I can depend on one guy that knows what I need here.
I wasn't happy with this. I got bleed under all the stars on the tail, so I decided to wet sand them off.
Let's see the pictures.
Plane like that can do this stuff.
It's silver? Rodex silver?
This is, Lampion's home.
I don't want to see his house. I want to see the silver.
No, these are all, unfortunately, these are all these other things I'm going to get to you in a minute. This is that's the Hawk.
Okay. Midgley's got his all lathered up, you know.
Some of these guys
Okay.
look familiar.
Did Midgley come down? Did he build a plane? Did you guys do it?
Yeah, it's done.
When did he come
He got it in
down?
the body's done.
No, but when did he come down?
A month ago.
Because he said he was gonna, I met him at a contest.
He was annoyed that you never showed up.
But he said, I'm gonna call you when I come
Don't
down.
trust him. Don't trust him.
Gilon and Bob Lampione.
They're from Israel.
Danny, that's easy. I'm Arnie. Arnie.
Now this man, Arnie, he's a man from your day and age.
I'm not into
The mirror meets. How many mirror meets did you go to? Arnie been to the mirror meets,
A few of them.
but now he's
You're
into
in the railroads,
trains.
right?
Railroads,
I met
model
you at the
railroads.
Palisades Park meet.
Right,
Wasn't he
right.
sitting with us?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah. He was sitting under my tent.
That's the last picture
Are you
I
the guy
sent
who told me to get
Oh,
out of my
all right.
chair? That's right, get out of my chair, let me sit up.
Boy, it comes back to haunt you.
Let me sit under my own easel.
Oh my God.
Well, it was sunny out. I mean, it was,
Oh, God, look at this.
that's after Windy had put in his winning flight.
Oh, stop it.
They went home with all the trophies.
Stop it.
So you came down from Carmichael?
He picked up, if you loved us, you would have helped us move machinery. That,
Oh,
that
just
big
what I
truck.
need, right.
Yeah. You wanna-
Truck across the street? Yeah.
Oh my, look at this guy. Suarez see this yet? This looks like something.
Billy?
Yeah, Billy.
Not yet.
Oh, my
We've seen
God.
just the solid stuff.
I like the solid one better. I don't like.
Well, what happens, I'm trying to get weight out.
All right, so how much does this weigh now? How heavy is this?
You know, this is the vacuum bag.
Yes, yes.
So,
Cardinal cap.
this one is, I think it's 5.4.
That's not unacceptable.
Yeah, just gotta get,
You need to put some little pieces in the middle there.
Right, you see the spars on that one. That one has carbon fiber rods. That's
Okay,
spars.
right, right.
Yeah, I was watching you before
So I
I
was
left
able to
on my
pick up
trip
all the
when you got
verticals.
with the Red Baron at the 90,
Oh, isn't that disgusting?
I guess, team trials.
Right, right. That's a long time ago,
In
my
the
boy.
1992 Forum.
I don't even want to know how old that is.
And you were there, Bobby.
You know, the Red Baron's dead, but I'm not. I don't know.
You used to get along with Bobby Hunt. You're in the way.
Yeah, Zambelli crashed it.
Yeah, it's only that.
Ah, stop. Bed wet in here.
I never saw one of those. That's when you could see Windy and Bobby sitting at the same table giving a lecture.
No more.
Who's the guy that crashed?
And you want to see something? Come here, Bobby, come here. Will you tell Big Jim?
And Big Jim was there.
Look, I want to show you this picture. See this picture?
I got that picture.
You tell Big Jim,
I got that picture.
that's the essence of stunt right there.
got that one. I think I took it.
Yeah, you took
I
it.
took that picture.
Look at Midgley. Look at Mike Rogers. He looks like he needs an enema. Look at Midgley.
Mike Savino, he was a good shape.
Mike Savino was still flying then. Wow.
Everybody else was afraid to fly. That one guy there was.
What a day. Anyway, we're making Strager cows. I thought you guys want some, some cows.
And at the end of this video, I was watching. It has you had the four, I guess, traditions.
Right.
Yellow one, a blue one, a red
Yeah.
one, and the green one.
I noticed.
And they all had the headers that came out.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's when you try to reinvent the turnpike.
That guy's still flying. That motor that was in there, that motor's still
The
flying.
red tradition is still.
Yeah.
The other ones are all gone, I guess.
Yep. Still around.
Got a challenge here.
All right, let me see what you're trying
These
to
are
do.
plug-in wings.
Okay, the Tom Morris plug-in
Right,
things?
so it's
Okay.
got the three
Okay.
pieces. They all go through the body.
You have to put that piece in the body, though.
Yeah, well, that's what we're gonna do.
Oh.
Notice how
Okay.
carefully he handles everything. Did you notice that? The gingerness?
You have to, no, see that?
You hope you don't handle your saber like that.
Every time
I had to worry when he was in the room, you know. Just the wingtip, not the rest of the
Not the rest of it, because I always hit the wingtips as I'm traveling in my house.
And by the way, if you can't bring a model from Israel, no problem. I'm going to have a model. You could rent it. Very inexpensive, but if you crash it, it gets very, very expensive.
Are you guys on the team for Israel for this upcoming year? Me, yes.
Yeah, he's on the F2B team. But they don't have to fly their own models. If he goes there and he likes Miss Ashley better, could fly Miss Ashley. Who
Fly
cares?
whatever you want.
You could fly anybody. They could switch planes.
I wish they'd do away with those. I mean, the builder of the model.
The championship come with the Russian models.
The Russian models like this.
The retro
Right.
Discovery.
Right, why don't you buy one of those Yashenko and we'll take it apart and see what he did.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's
Big Jim will like that.
We got him beat already.
Made out of gel coat.
Problem is this.
It's a nice looking airplane.
Oh,
In a suitcase.
okay, the clutch looks good.
So I want to put a former and catch the back of the crutch. Right.
You haven't seen this fly other than tape?
I want to catch.
Come on, Windy, let's go out and fly the other guy there. Today's a great...
We were gonna fly you a saver today.
Teach you how to...
100-mile-an-hour
I can
wind.
show you how Gene Schaefer used to wind fly.
No, you can't. Gene Schaefer can't even show you that.
And this. Question is this. Do I
Okay.
do former, rod through, put the rod through it, and just, or do I need to double it here?
Boy, you know what I would
Then
do?
do the former.
I would look at the plans to Paul Walker's plane and see how he does it.
Oh, he's big.
No, he has, well, I don't.
Pretty color.
I don't have the plan.
Make a nice color for...
Well, I have them.
That's what I mean.
Elliot,
I don't own the plan.
All right, well, we could get Paul, I could get that information.
Okay.
I might even have it here. I'll see if Elliot
You
left
don't
a set of
have a
plans.
set of those plans?
I may not, because Elliot's bringing them. He's moving to America, so when he could, they're all in his possession.
All right.
But we could order a set from him today. But he's going to be here the 20th. He's going to be here the 21st. So if he's here the 21st, come over.
Next week.
Pick him up. They'll be here.
Next week, okay.
Right.
Just before...
These look good, by the way.
Is he having Thanksgiving with you and Karen?
No,
What happens is
no, it's the week before Thanksgiving.
No, I know that. I'm saying, is he having Thanksgiving with you and Karen?
Oh, no, he's going to be looking for a house.
Oh, they don't celebrate Thanksgiving over there?
Not the way we do. It's,
Well, are you going to the kids' house, or are they all...
yeah, the kids do. We do Christmas, they do Thanksgiving.
All right.
I think this
And
looks
now that
pretty
you've
good.
renovated their house, it should be nice for you.
Well, I hope so. You see, I was doing plumbing all last week.
pink
Okay. Pink foam flaps, and what's on top?
carbon fiber mat,
How long you
layer
in
of
for?
cloth.
Okay.
Well, when I leave here, you back
See the difference?
Pick my wife up, I dropped her.
I'm able to get
Oh, she's down having fun?
this finish,
Okay.
but it requires X amount of resin.
Taking her.
You know, you gotta really, but if you just do it on a Mylar and cover it lightly and squeegee most of it off, I end up like that. So I either gotta use enough and leave it on there to get that,
9 hours.
or use that, sand it down flat and fill it and finish.
down there.
Right, or, and then I don't know which one is heavier or which.
You gotta make two and see which one is lighter. That's what you have to do.
I ran a
Also on the pink,
parkway up
do we?
5, and then I had to come across.
I never used the pink foam yet. I have.
No,
That's why I never used it. Okay.
What happens is it's stiffer than the white foam. So for flaps, I wanted a stiffer flap
Sure.
because these are so big.
But how much does this weigh?
1.6.
Yeah, I never know.
They're heavy, but it's pink foam.
I've been meaning to call
Now,
John.
the other ones weigh 1 ounces. In the white foam, they weigh.
1 ounce is the most I would want it to weigh.
The other ones weigh an ounce. And,
How much can you sand off?
I understand some kid.
well, not much, because it's just got a easy lamb resin, and you tell them 1 layer 0.75 cloth.
Tom, hand me that fiberglass wing over there. This is what we're doing right now.
Spark between,
I've done this.
fill tube
Okay,
and
I got this. Exactly like this.
Yeah. This is 3 ounces. This is 3. That's for the electric plane.
Right. Okay.
We got 5 of them. Johnny Duncan's got 5 more he's bringing to the show.
his word for it. Well, it's because somebody, the
Which show?
story that I read.
Trading thing that they have.
was smoking in the doorway because it was raining.
What I've done with these is I bag them with cloth.
No bag on top of it. No bag.
No, it sounds like a
Solid core wing, 30-second sheet, half-ounce cloth, less resin, just trowel it off. Then he has these templates to core it, and it's the coring that gets the last amount. And we changed them to, this is the test one.
You put the next one.
And these panels are 3 ounces.
I'm at 4 ounces with the fiberglass finish all through.
Okay.
Leading edge trailing.
Well, 4 ounces is fine. I mean, this is only 3 because this is the end. I want that electric plane to be as light, super light.
Well, my 4 ounces is with the finish already applied. You don't paint it anymore than
Right, done.
So it's 4 ounces, you're done. Other than you gotta put a strip of paint on the leading edge and the trailing edge.
Okay.
Well, Windy, you had too much company today. All that carbon fiber nonsense, I don't even know what to do about it. Too much company. Now get back to work. You got moles to work on. You got cowlings to make. You got birds to feed. Too much work.
Now, we've been putting coats on this. There's about 5 coats of clear now, and I just wanted to show we're ready, probably this afternoon, or first and floor, but this is the important thing, is powder. What you're always looking for with a dope finish is powder. powder, 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 and more powder. And then you know it's going to sand quickly, it's going to sand easily. Now in this case I'm not using a block for the final coats, because I'm trying to get out the joints where this is double tissued and triple tissued. I'm real happy with the weight on this being 52 grams. Boy, that is, when I think of some of the days that I suffered along with chewing gum, it's a pleasure to work with these materials. These materials are such a pleasure to work with relative to the stuff from 4 or 5 years ago. Anyway, we had quite a session the other day with our friends from Israel. They really are on the F2B team, and you will get to see them fly on the upcoming World Champion videos that we'll be shooting about 9 months from now. Powder. When you've got powder like that, the sand out is beautiful. Now once I finish sanding this, what I usually do is I'll take sandpaper and roll it up into little edges and corners. In this case I want to get in all these little edges and corners. It's just time consuming. This is just like a lot of things in life. Get in the hinge pockets just a little bit. Now I wanted this to have a good dope finish in here also, because this is one of the things we're going to, when this is all put together, we won't be seeing this, and I don't want oil or fuel to get in there. Sunburn fuel. And you always wind up with a little bit of dope in there that after a while I just wind up putting a drop of that chain lube in there. Constantly moving it like this to keep it free so it doesn't bind up. Otherwise the dope, CA, everything runs into that little confined little bushing that's in there. Anyway, I think we're coming up on having this ready for our first coat of silver filler, which we're going to put on. It's raining right now, and I'm not going to put it on until it stops raining, and then we'll have this in silver and let it dry.
Silver? I like yellow, orange, and green.
These guys are making me crazy. There are 2 of them. Hey, your brother's over here. Your brother's over here. Go see him. Hey, this really does make a boring job, like the hours you have to spend sanding this, the dope down. Just having something to enjoy.
Silver? Oh no.
Now, because I had some dry spots, I decided to just spray on a coat of clear. Once this dries, or I'll let it dry overnight maybe. Then I'll put on my first coat of silver filler, silver with a little talc in it, start building up the base for this parts. Now, of all the questions that we ever get asked, one of the ones that's the most frustrating of all, and we just got asked it today by our good friend James Mills. I want to do a little storyboard about this because the answer, if you haven't built the model yet, the answer is real easy. If you've built the model already, it's very difficult. This is a very, very common question. True story. This is absolutely true. When I was a junior, I was 16 years old. We were sitting on the runway with then, I think he was the Nats champ, Lou McFarland, and we were just oogling on this big new Shark 45. 1960, I think, 61. Good, tell you how good my memory is. Anyway, beautiful Shark 45. The line sweeper that sweeps the airport at Willow Grove came along with this big brush that swept the field, went right over Lou's lines, chewed up his lines, just made him crazy. So, almost lost the plane. So, I went home then, immediately, got a set of plans to the Shark 45, built my own that came out to be 90 ounces or something crazy. Because as a junior, I wasn't aware of any of the tricks that the experts weren't free to give tips at that point in time. Anyway, our good friend James, and you've seen his children even on our video, and his children's room, he made this beautiful Shark 45. Plane's already built. Well, what he did is when he built the plane, he made it for a Tiger 51, which he just happened to have in stock. Well, anybody that's built a Shark knows the nose is very narrow. This part right here really swoops in. It has 1 3/4 inches smaller than normal spinner, so there's a lot of tapering going on in the nose. But anyway, he flies the plane. The plane came out 64 ounces. Well, 64 ounces for that size plane is a little on the heavy side, and so what James wanted to do is replace this with a bigger motor. Tiger 60 would be one of the choices. So when he looked at how the nose was built, the mounts were very close together. And we had about 5 phone calls about this problem before he finally decided to abandon ship. The mounts are very close together because a 51 is a very narrow engine. So he had built this, and now what he wanted to do, and it's a little, I'm not sure we're even doing this to scale, but a 60 would have meant cutting away a big chunk of the mounts. And that would have meant that the bolt holes were in the wrong position and everything, really weakening the nose. And the one thing you don't want to do with a Tiger 60 is weaken the nose. So, when we had talked about it, I told James about the clamp mount system. And of course, this has been in Stunt News, or if anybody wants a copy of this, we sell them, so does Brodak now. This is one of Brodak's products too. Well, the whole reason for coming up with this is we wanted to be able to infinitely switch motors in airplanes, and for our own personal reason. I mean, we want to do this. So we came up with the clamp mount system. It sold out the first production run we made. We even sold out Brodak's production run. But here's what really happens here is when you're building a plane, early on you want to make the decision to, and I may as well do a separate storyboard, to make the mounts far enough apart that in keeping with the design, and obviously if you're using a nostalgia design, there's a way of cheating the system here, but let me make a little storyboard up of how I've handled this in the past, and it works very well, I think. Now, almost every plane uses a crutch type of mounting. If it doesn't, it's one of the choices you have when building it, even old nostalgia planes. But it's this dimension between the mounts. This is now the critical dimension. And had James or myself early on put these apart, and what I do, I have an old Super Tiger 60 crankcase, because I know that's the biggest dimension I'm going to ever have to use. That dimension, and if I build it with a Super Tiger 60 with this dimension here, if I build it with that dimension, and I use the clamp mount system, when I take that motor out, I'm always going to be able to put a smaller motor in. In this case, if you built it with a Tiger 60, you could always put a 51 in with no problem at all. You probably even can put a 40 in. And now that brings up the second point. The last time I spoke to Wes, he's busy engineering and making drawings for his crutches. He's having some aluminum plates made to do all this. What I suggested to him we do when we make this plane, since the Rojet 40 is one of the motors we're going to use, and I'd like to, just in case old Windy gets to build his a little bit too heavy and we want to be able to put either a 50 or in a case a 60, 61, 65. Why don't we just make the mounts wide enough that all of the motors fit in? And it turns out that the biggest motor that we use, or I think it's the biggest motor that we would have to encounter, is a Tiger 60. So once that motor fits in there, and you have clamps, the rest is a piece of cake. Now, to go back to James's dilemma, and I think he may be using these in the future, had he done that early on, putting the 51 in would have been no problem at all. But now, very difficult, if not impossible, to do all the cutting and moving and refinishing, and very difficult. So my suggestion is, if you if you think you're going to want to test different motors. In the case if you're not going to test different motors, well, then it doesn't matter anyway. But it's cheap insurance, because what happens, supposing you did this when a Max S was the dominant stunt motor, and along comes the next generation of motors. Well, from what I understand already, Randy Smith already has a new 40 size motor. Rich Oliver's coming out with new stuff. There's always the possibility you want to run a 4-stroke or try one. And there's just things, there's no reason to lock yourself into one dimension when there's the ability for about an extra 5 minutes of work. You can put any motor that'll fit in between the mounts in a matter of minutes. And what I've done is, if I know, for instance, I want to run a 4-stroke and a 2-stroke, put 2 needle valve holes in right while you're building a plane. Why limit yourself? There's just no reason to limit yourself. And in James Mills's case, now it's too late, but he was hoping that I'd pass the information on in a way. I hope he'll even write about it in Stunt News, because once you have this and a plane comes out a little heavy, you've always got the choice of a bigger, more powerful motor. Or in the worst case scenario, you can use other motors. But you don't lock yourself into one set of bolt holes and one set of blind nuts. It's the way these motors cost $300 and $400. I don't want to be hitting them with a Dremel tool. I want them to stay like the day I bought them. Anyway, just thought I'd share that. James wanted me to share it. It's good information, and whether you have a Shark 45 or an SV11 or actually even an Obler, and profiles even better. That's a way of ensuring that you'll have all the choices. Speaking of James Mills, you may remember this from last year. He sent some pictures of the artwork he did, him and his wife and their new baby. But James, you gotta put adjustable mounts in those Shark 45s. That's the whole deal. Anyway, hey, just randomly we're making copies of this video today, and I thought there'd be some of his Shark 45 here, but I guess there isn't. Anyway, back. Well, look at these memories of putting this thing together. We're going to be starting on the fuselage and the nacelle as soon as we get these parts in silver, and that's coming faster than you think. Today, this first coat of silver filler, I'm dry sanding it. And I usually keep a paper towel handy here. Just wanted to make sure it was dry enough. This has talc in it. Again, what I'm looking for, the most significant thing here, is to make sure it's powdering off. And this is what I keep saying over and over, to the point of being bored. When you're dry sanding, it's important to wipe that dust away. When you're wet sanding, that flows away. Now, especially with 400, if you've chosen 400, and sometimes you can even sand this with 320, what happens is that dust tends to clog up the sandpaper. So if you sand for, I don't know, some amount of time, if you're not wet sanding, and the reason I'm not wet sanding is I think we really have some thin spots on here. You can see there's a spot right here that looks a little thin. These will all fill in with the silver as we go along. And the thing here is to make the commitment that you're not going to stop this process until the part is perfect. Spray a coat of silver filler on, let it dry a day or so. If you can, up by a heating vent, dry sand it off preferably, or wet sand it, depending on what your preference is. I like to wet sand once I get the silver that has no talc in it on there. But you see a lot of little spots, all little imperfections, all little things that you want to fill in, so you don't want to see them in the absolute final finish. And what I would just want to do is just show just about how long this takes to do. Because we're going to do this today. This is one of the things we're going to hopefully do today. And how much you want to leave on. You want to leave on, well, some small amount. Because the silver really shows you that, here, right here is a typical example, a little tiny imperfection. You don't think you'll see that? In the final coat, you will. Now, where you lose the time now by maybe a couple hours of sanding, but where you gain is when you go to buff this part out, there'll be no buff throughs that you have to repair. In other words, it's just like making a building where you make the foundation straight, level, solid, and then the rest of the building comes out the way you want it to. Now, I got a comment. A guy was watching this. I don't remember who it was. Years ago, and he sent me this audio tape about the Tin Man, Oz the Tin Man, from the Wizard of Oz, I guess. And when you do this barehanded, like I'm doing now, I've got to get me some more gloves. What's the problem? I usually would do this with gloves, but... And I'm glad to see a lot of other people now, including John Pop here, are trying to use gloves to their advantage. It really does protect your hands, and in my case, my hands are always chewed up anyway from doing other work and working on houses and the stuff we normally have to do to maintain a 100-year-old house. Now see right here, we've come up, you didn't see that before, but you see the joint in the tissue. That's going to need one more coat. But now here's the point where I make the distinction is I want this model to be as nicely finished and with as imperfection-free as I can. So if I have to spend another hour sanding another coat or half an hour, or you can see how fast this goes. In fact, what I want to do is do one quadrant to the stab. You can just pretty much do that by 4 and you'll know how long it takes to sand out a stab. Because a lot of people, I've noticed even when they work in a shop, it takes them way too long to do these sand outs. It just takes forever. It should not take long. It should be relatively quick. Relative, of course, is like money. It's a relative thing. To a millionaire, having to spend $100 on a parking ticket's not a big deal, but to a working man, it can be relative. Relative's a good word. Now, right here, I just wanted to show that here's the second joint of our tissue coming through. But when it's all done, okay, and that's one quadrant. Not a big deal. We're going to do the rest of it off camera, of course. And it looks like we may even have some time this weekend. We may get some weather. We have had the worst weather. I want to have a dry day that the wind isn't howling to spray my actual silver with no talc. But with a little bit of talc in the silver, it just fills right in. And it also lets it sand just a little bit easier. And maybe at some point in time, we'll be satisfied that all the imperfections are out. Then we'll sand it the last time, put that nice light coat on, that very, very thin coat, almost an airbrush coat, and then we're ready. That part is ready then for when we actually make the fuselage. Now, that was one quadrant. Here's a quadrant left to do. I always try to get, here's a little imperfection. When you see these little things, you're not going to see them until you paint it silver. And the advantage is, here's another little one here. If you spend the time right now, and you commit to that sanding time right now, you'll spend an hour. But somewhere down the road, you're going to save 2 or 3 hours, because if you don't do it now, you'll be buffing out the plane, and whoops, there comes a spot. You look at some beautiful planes at the Nats, and right in the middle of things, they have buff-throughs. And then it's so hard to fix it and make it go away, and you put extra ink lines and decals, and it's just easier to make a solid foundation for the building right now. And I hope that's one thing everybody gets out of this, even just watching this one video. What Rich Jacobone's doing, these are his little stupid wheel pants. And we're going to make a little mold. These are very, I think they're too small, but Rich says no. He thinks he can get a wheel in there. I don't know.
I can get a wheel in there.
We're going to find out. I'm never wrong about this.
You have a 2-inch diameter wheel here?
Who's right, me or you? Who's right more
This
times?
time, I'm right. I measured.
So he's going to make up a little mold and a base plate. We already made this part for him. This part is done. This part came out real nice, in fact. That part's in fiberglass now. The reason he's doing this is we have to seal this. He's got to put a little piece of 64th plywood across here and then even it out. Otherwise the rubber is going to go underneath there when we glue that to the base plate. Yeah, you got to get it perfectly flat. Otherwise, if there's a lip under there, you know what happens, that the rubber goes underneath there. While he's doing that, I've been sanding out another coat of silver on this. We'll see how that works out. You're gonna and try to get them close together. You know, in other words, don't put them a foot apart.
Where's your
Put 'em so there's about a quarter of an inch in between.
I need a little piece of plywood in here and in here.
Now what Rich is doing is adding to the thickness by a little bit. And what that does, it gives you a little extra material when you go to join them together. Instead of being that if you just have to sand off a 64th of an inch, then they don't match equally. You have a flat spot, and you can just get them, sand one or both sides until you get the curvature that you want. So it takes a little bit of extra work to add that little lip on each side, but I think it'll be well worth it. Plus, if you knew the price Rich is paying for these wheel pants, whoa. This we may have to buy a pizza parlor. And Rich got his tickets today. Him and I are both going to Texarkana. We're going to be what do they call it?
The Three Amigos.
The Two Amigos. Well, he hasn't got his tickets yet, so we'll see.
The Three Amigos.
We're going to invade Texas. Teach him everything we know. It'll take about 15 minutes. I go to Texas, too. Can I go to Texas?
I don't want that lousy bird.
Freddie bit Rich yesterday. Well, show him your wound.
Look at that.
Look, it didn't even heal you. Freddie bit.
Piece out of my finger. Freddy Krueger.
Freddie Krueger. They renamed him Freddie Fuqua. His name is Freddie Krueger now. Come on, I want to get this mold made. Taking up my whole quality day here, baby.
Sand here.
Yeah, get it nice and even, and then we'll just take the blanket out. See, we used to have a sanding machine, but thanks to Freddie Krueger, we don't have a sanding machine anymore.
That bird is mean.
He's not mean to me. Mean? Mean? Freddie, you said you're mean. Are you mean? Are you a mean bird? Freddie. Look, Freddie doesn't mind. He loves me. Freddie, you bite me on camera, boy, are you in big trouble.
What's wrong with that guy?
He loves me.
Watch.
What? Watch what he does when Rich goes there. He's gonna get you again! Oh, I hope he gets you on camera. He's letting you pet him. Look at that. Now that's nice. See that? He got you. Freddie Fuqua's gonna bite him. Look at this. Oh, man. Rich, the idea is not to try to be a wise guy. Just be nice to him. Look, he's letting you pet him. Look at that.
Be nice.
See?
I'm not going to hurt you.
You guys are blood. Oh, boy, you are a coward. I'm glad you're not the alligator man or what's that guy, the crocodile man?
Yeah, Mr. Crocodile.
You know who I mean.
Be nice.
And Chicky, he's your brother. You gotta love him. We can let Chicky out. We're done
He's
thinking.
so beautiful.
Come on out, Chick. Chicky, come on. He's your brother. Come on. Help Richard make that mold. We're gonna make a mold today. We're gonna play with the birds.
I'm going to play with the bird. Freddy Krueger.
Oh,
He doesn't like this finger.
Well, don't give him that finger. Look, he's letting you pet him. Look, that's a good bird. Freddie. Oh, I would love if he bites you. He's fast, though, isn't he? You don't think he's that fast, and all of a sudden he gets you.
I don't want him around
Come
me.
on, Freddie. Freddie, show him how much you love Windy.
Freddy
Look at that.
Krueger.
Let me scratch your neck. Freddie, you're supposed to be my buddy. Let's go bite Rich. Come on.
No. Let's
bite Rich with a razor-sharp beak.
He took a piece out of my
You want to get that 90 degrees now. Try to keep it 90 degrees. Don't get it all cockeyed, okay?
I'll try to keep it.
Yeah, I know you will. All right, and as soon as you're done with that, we'll mount it to the base plate. And we'll pour up the mold similar to the bottom block mold, which seemed to work pretty good.
On a moonlight night you can find them all. While you're waiting, the band of the syncopating. What's that they're saying? While it is playing, a humming and swaying. It's a good ship of a deed that comes to carry the cotton away.
Okay, so all we did is make a little box. These are set on a base plate. We're going to pour the molding rubber on that, and then Rich will have then an unlimited set of wheel pants. He'll be in the wheel pant business.
We can give a set to Matt Newman.
Matt Newman. In fact, on his new Stuka, he's going to make Matt Newman the pilot. Now, the only part of this left is wait for our air bubbles to rise up. And pull us apart tomorrow. We're about at the end of this day. And Rich should be able to have, from this point in his life on, Stuka wheel pants. By the dozen. So early this morning, Mike Kajeski comes to the house and says, let's go flying, let's go flying, let's go flying. Talks me into going flying. It is about 25 degrees. I'm freezing. But I thought to myself, if I don't go flying, I have to stay home and rake leaves. So he suckers me into it. So we're up here, and I mean, it is cold. But you can see there are no leaves left on the trees. And actually what happens here is at this time of year, the air does get a little bit more predictable than in the summer when you're in a real dust bowl. In fact, he's got crews out there flying now. He beat me up here. Anyway, cold weather. Some of the things about cold weather, maybe I'll try to put some of the tips on that I find work well for me when you're flying in ultra cold weather like this. First thing is have a lot of coffee before you come to the field. Mike's got the ladder. We're going to do some work on my house. We had a storm the last couple days, and some of the fascia on the front of the house. The fun with old houses is they blow apart when the wind blows. We'll do some work on the house today too, but we will get some flights. You remember this from the summer, this was all underwater, and boy, it smells. There are plenty of dead fish back there. If you don't take a walk, you really can't walk back there. And there are some dead things growing back there. Branches are broken down from the storm. Things are pretty bleak here, but heck, there's branches here. But it's not going to stop us from getting a couple flights. Telltale sign of the storm. All the stairs are blown down. So, you talk Windy into going flying. It's freezing cold. I feel like I'm in Buffalo, New York or something. Still looks good, baby. And Mike is going to be starting his Strega wing soon. It's raining. Yeah, I see some rain. And we're busy putting together the parts he's going to need to get his Strega going. How'd you talk me into this anyway?
I figured you would get the hint.
Somebody else just drove in the parking lot. Who the...
I didn't show up at the house at 7:30. You should know.
Oh, man. Now, what I like to do in cold weather, of course, the first thing, if you're using 10% nitro, you definitely can go down to 5. The engines will use more fuel. First thing you'll notice is you may run out of fuel. In ultra cold weather, you got to back out the needle. In my case, I back it out about a quarter of a turn before I even start the engine. I don't want it to go dead lean on the startup. Now Mike's got a Tiger 60 in there, so we don't know how much he's going to go in or go out or go in. But I can tell you, they're not going to use less fuel in cold weather. That's for sure. Also, the planes turn a lot better. A lot of times you're better off just putting in a ½ ounce of nose weight right off the bat. Or in my case, I have 2 sets of lines and handles. I just had Ken Tyson make me up some new lines. So I'll make a second handle down about 1 notch for cold weather. And of course, lighter fluid. We all have learned the hard way in this really nasty weather. If you can't get engines to flip over, a couple of drops of Ronson in the Venturi. That's a good starting routine. Some low nitro fuel. The ultimate insult is after a couple of flights, we got 1 flight each. It's starting to rain and just too cold to be out here. We're going back home to the shop. Well, the tree-lined streets of Rutherford are not tree-lined anymore. They're just branch-lined. Anyway, we got to meet with Mike and do this little job on the house. Wait till you see what happened to my poor house. Never buy an old house if you have a life or if you want to have a life. As soon as Mike gets here with the ladder, we're going to have to take care of this. We've had some storm. It's been murder for about the last 4 or 5 days. But believe me, you buy a house this old, this is a 100-year-old house, you buy a house this old, you will enjoy working on it.
Come on, tell that crazy Mike, get up on a ladder. Yeah, if I could do it, I could just fly up there and fix it, but you guys need a ladder, ha ha ha.
Freddie, I'm telling you, see, we have to babysit him from time to time, especially on a weekend, so, Freddie, we really are enjoying having you here. I'm not sure everybody's entertained by your wonderful personality, though. I'm not sure Chicky appreciates your personality either. See, Chicky doesn't want, he's jealous. No, sticking your tongue out. You're gonna go live with Ken Claps and you're not good. I just can't wait till Mike gets here with the ladder. These birds are making me crazy.
We have tradition forever.
Look like you're doing quality work. Looks like a new house again. Karen will be so happy. Oh, Karen's in there polishing her dishes for the holidays. Woo!
Well, don't polish them yet. Wait till she gets my bill.
She's polishing them with your bill, I think. Oh.
See, the only way you're going to get this done cheaper, if I understand correctly, I think the circuit burners gave me my raise.
Oh, yeah.
If they gave me the raise, then everything's going to be right. If not, it's going to cost you about $500.
Now, Jacobone and I had a better idea. Next year, you don't ask him for a raise, and the money we make at the Pal Park meet, we just give it to you.
There you go.
And don't give it to the stupid museum. Well, Dopey Club, they made $700 at our contest, and they donated to the museum, and then they tell Mike they don't have $200 for his raise. Not sure about our club. Our club is they're not the brightest bulbs on the tree sometimes. But anyway, we're back. Our house is back at last. Now you may remember when we put the wing that was in the plane when it was new, and you remember the wing that was in after Stevie McBride flew into the plane. Then you remember the wing after. All 3 wings. Well, you got this plane has a glorious past. Miss Jamie. And you would think after Mike does all that work, there'd be time to relax in Windy's house. We'll go work on the A26. So not with my wife. She's got it. Today is, what do we call today? Let's clean every dish that we own.
China closet.
Let's clean the China closet. Why don't we go work on the A26? Get the smell of dope permeate in the air here.
We did that yesterday.
Oh. But this is her equivalent of the A26 right here. She loves her China collection. Many of the pieces we have here have been given to us by people that have already passed away, so we kind of treasure them. How many glasses do you own, Karen?
6,027. Let's go.
Oh, I'm being shushed. I'm being pushed along.
Come on, you promise you'd help.
Okay, this morning after a nice cup of coffee, Rich's mold looks like it's hardened up. There's plenty of overage here. Anyway, we're going to cut the outside part off, take this mold, and make up a little test set of wheel pants. Look at this bird. Get out of here. Go play with Freddie. I'm going to make up a little test set for him today and see if they meet with his very high standards. Now, this really came off in one piece, which will be real nice for us. In case we want to, after a couple of mold tries, we can try one by putting a saran wrap on this and making a compression mold out of it. But the first thing I want to do is lay up a couple parts and just see how they look before we get too fancy with this. Now I want to make sure these pieces of material are going to fit in here. There's quite a curvature to it. It'd be very difficult to use carbon in this because it wouldn't want to conform. I think those pieces will be fine. So we have plenty of these scrap pieces. I just wanted to make sure we had enough. I'll mix up the resin,
Get a little cabosil for the edges, cabosil around the edges, and see if we can lay up a part here. Now I was thinking as I was working on this and talking to Rich about the possibility of, well, I may do it on a little storyboard. Make a little storyboard about cold weather fly-in tips, some of the things we've found. Now, the thing is, if you live in a part of California or somewhere where the weather, or we're at the opposite, it's cold all the time, you don't really realize how dramatic the change is from cold weather to warm weather, the needle valve setting change, the feel of the plane changes. And maybe I'll do a little storyboard about that on one of the future tapes. But right now, here's what I wanted to do. I wanted to mix up a little cabosil. Ooh, as I said, I want to mix up a lot of cabosil. And the trick here is to make a paste that gives us corners and edges. And you want to make it about like warm peanut butter or mayonnaise. One of the things they tell you is to make it like mayonnaise on the West Systems info. Make it like mayonnaise. There's two stages. Mayonnaise, where it drips. And since I never eat mayonnaise, I don't even know what it's like. But I know what peanut butter is. And when it's peanut butter, it's a little bit on the too thick side. So we want to just get a little paste going here. Now, there's a significant thing for Rich's benefit on this, since he wants to build more Stukas. He's actually thinking about building one next year with a bent wing. And we've been thinking about the possibility, with Les's help, coming up with a set of drawings and stuff. Elliot Scott is already making the real drawings to his Stuka, which is by now a pretty well-proven design, even though it's a Cardinal, so he doesn't want to tell anybody that. He wants to be like Das Cardinal. Him and Matt Newman have a lot of fun, though, with their little rivalry, so it's kind of a lot of fun even for me. Now, I want to see if I can, the challenge here is going to be to see if we can get this up in all the corners. Now, since I started making these little molded parts like this, I just find it challenging and fun to do. And a lot of people, I guess, have kind of joined me in there, and they're looking at the possibility of making cowls, and because we've got about I'll bet we have 100 molds if I went upstairs and counted them all. And we're still making the traditional ones. I have a little bit too much cabosil in here. The traditional ones for the Nobler and parts like that, I think that little thing is never going to end. Anyway, I want to get 2 layers in here, so let's get another layer. Let's see if we can. So the nice thing about e-glass is if you don't need the incredible strength of carbon, the e-glass really conforms into these corners nicely. And believe it or not, wheel pants are a relatively difficult thing to get right. The molds have to be accurate, or the parts don't mate up just right. And then getting the joint can be a little difficult. Anyway, rather than put the whole way up, this is one. This is going to be the end of this. And we'll see how these little parts come out. Now we'll see once we pull these apart if this is going to make a nice enough shell, and if it doesn't, of course, we're going to cut the original plugs out and then just shove them in there with a piece of saran wrap behind them, but I don't think that's going to even be necessary. I think these are going to lay up relatively nice. We'll come back to this tomorrow and see how it pans out. Now, in some of the spare time in between making parts and making tune pipes and stuff, what I wanted to do, I just thought I'd show this up on the tape. This has proven to be a good way to do this. I ran out of red lead or nitrostain, and so what I did, I mixed up the other night, I mixed up a little bit of air epoxy light just to see how this would work as a dent filler. Let's call it a dent filler. Now, keep in mind, we already have a substrate So this is a relatively hard surface, and it's relatively easy to block sand it in. And now from this point on, the only sanding I'm going to do on this wing is going to be with 1200 or 600 or whatever. But we're not going to do any more rough, I don't think, any more rough dry sanding. But that just blended right in. So I would say there's a good chance that this could be used, and because it dries relatively hard, as opposed to nitrous stain, which is like chewing gum sometimes, this might be a better way of making a little repair on a critical edge. And this is on a hinge line. You're probably not even going to see it, but you know, there's an old saying in artwork, the gods see everywhere, and I see everywhere. Anyway, we really are trying to make this as nice as possible, so even though nobody would ever see that, well, nobody except me, and I'm the one that matters. Now, we have two choices now, and the choices are real simple. We're going to look over our silver parts, and you can see this is right on the verge of being dry. I'm not sure you can really even see this, the texture. It's right on the verge of being dry. And one of the choices we're going to have in the next couple of days, I always like to let it dry a couple of days. I can take 600 sandpaper and wet sand the whole wing, in which case I'll get a much nicer, smoother coat of silver on. One of the advantages of doing that, maybe I could even get rid of a little bit of weight, because all the silver will come off except what's in the valley, and the mountaintops will get shaved. So that's one of the choices, but this wing is actually well under the weight that I projected it for now. It's about 3 ounces again, lighter than the B25 was right at this stage. So I have the two choices, and one of the choices is I can just leave this the way it is for the time being and wait for a day when I have plenty of time to do the sanding, or I can use it as fill-in when there's an afternoon, there's a football game on or a baseball game or something. I can just do this while I'm not really even paying attention, but I've got the texture that I want. Now right now, if I wanted to, I could put right over this a coat of B25 silver, and I'd be done. But if I'm patient, take my time and give this one more sand out with 600, I really can lighten it a little bit and at the same time really get even a little nicer finish on this. But then I can do that I can do anytime right up until a day, and this is all drying out, right up until the day I actually have the nacelles in place, everything's in place. There's no rush to do that until a day before you're actually going to put the color. In this case, it'll probably be B25 silver, and we'll change it to B26 silver. But I don't need to rush it now. Now I've got all the hard stuff out of the way, and from this point on, doing little touch-ups, little trailing edge stuff, it's a lot of fun. It's not like you have these big giant sand outs. These are very nice and easy now. Now the stab still has a bunch of little spots to touch up, but I wanted to show, and I'll do just a minute of this on camera. This is M600. It's the replacement of M600. It's made by Gavin's. Piece of 1200 sandpaper. You could use 600 if you want to. The idea of this is not to grind down, is to put a really nice burnished finish on it. And if you do this properly, it takes a little time. When you're wet sanding, it just takes a little time, but the final finish is so much nicer. One of the tricks that makes it go a lot quicker is get rid of all that sanding residue, and you can see we're already coming up on having it done. Learning how to sand efficiently, get rid of the stuff off the sandpaper. Learning how to sand efficiently makes these beautifully finished models a reality. When your sanding techniques are less than good, well, you really wind up spending way too much time doing something that should go quickly. In this case, let's just do one little spot, and I'll do the rest off camera. Nice thing about this is you don't really have to pay attention. You could be watching television, or you could be chatting with your friends on a cell phone or something. I usually wind up watching a football game or something that's mindless when I'm doing this. Trick is, get rid of all the residue. Constantly get rid of the residue. Get rid of the residue. One piece of sandpaper will do the whole, in this case, the whole tail. Probably do the whole wing too. Now you can get a little look. Let's just polish this up. You can see we still have a couple little spots. There's a low spot up here, but right now we're coming up on having that real nice finish on there. And it'll actually even have a little bit of shine when I'm finished. And I'll do the rest of this stab off camera, but this is now coming up on being the final product. And now what I can do is this last coat of silver, I can decant it. In other words, put a little more pigment in it. Don't shake the can, pour off the top, add a little thinner. And what that'll do, that'll just give me a microfine coating of silver when I'm done. The ultimate thin coat of silver. Because if I know I'm going to sand it, there's no reason to put it on thin and with extra pigment. You may as well just put it on. But now, this next coat may be a coat we're going to see. Now, because I've got a couple of spots on here sanded relatively thin and relatively dry, what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a thin coat of clear on there, let that dry for about an hour, and once it dries up, then just spray on a coat of silver. Anytime you sand through edges or little spots, and again, we are really trying to keep this super light, anytime I see dry spots or a little, like right here is one. Here's one you can see. Well, the way I'm going to hopefully be able to disguise all that and make a perfectly smooth aluminum finish, just add a coat of clear, give it an hour or so to dry in this temperature anyway, and put on the coat of silver, and you hope, no matter how many times you do it, you hope that's the last coat, but you can always be fussier and fussier and fussier. It depends. If your motive is just to fuel-proof the plane, we were done months ago. But if we really want to think about having it as nice as possible for our own satisfaction or to win some award, this award or that award or concourse award or whatever, well, you make the decision. The decision is a very personal one. How much time and energy you're willing to spend on a port. And that's what usually determines the final result. I'm trying to take advantage of the fact that one coat of clear, the hell just fell down. This thing's falling off my house still. One coat of clear over this, a lot of people would just put a coat of silver, yeah, but if you put that coat of clear, it almost guarantees you're going to get the next coat. Now you can see what I've just done. I don't have enough pressure here. I just want to get a dusting of clear. And on any of the spots that don't look so hot, or that I see like up on a leading edge here, I've kind of sanded almost through, gotten it real thin. There's no formula for this. There's no, well, do this, do that. It's like cooking. You have to put a little salt and go, yeah, that's about right. You have to kind of have a feel for when you've got enough paint on there, enough dope. Always a little extra. Look at that squirrel running around. Always a little extra on the hinge lines. There's that bad spot up there that we're trying to work on. A lot of dry spots on the bottom. We'll try to address them if we can. This gets difficult at the end to hold it. Always a little bit on the leading edge extra, a little bit on a trailing edge extra. And now we'll give this an hour or so to dry before we put the silver on. I can grab it by the horn. Every time I do this, I drop it. Look at this. I did it again. Always a little extra on the hinge lines. Quiet, Freddie. I feel like I work in a pet shop with these birds. And now, any spot I know is dry. There's a dry spot, an edge, a dry spot, a dry spot. And it should give you about an hour for that to dry. But that's a good way to save yourself when you know you've sanded through the silver and into some dry spots. Just spray on another coat of clear. That clear is drying up there. I took some of the other small parts trying to take advantage of a day that it's not raining, because it's supposed to rain the next couple of days. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing to these off camera. Put a coat of clear on them. Let them dry, and then get up there and get a nice coat of silver on them, hopefully before the rain comes. It's supposed to be 3 days of rain. Anyway, the other thing we're trying to do here, where's that wing? If it doesn't rain tomorrow, I'll take advantage of the fact and get one more sanding on this wing with 1200. And what that does, it just does that nice burnish job. Oh, and I love that. And anytime I need to think about if, is it worth it because there's only one or two little spots I want to take care of? Well, sure it is. That's the thing to understand, is that if you're working under pressure or you have to finish at a certain time, or when you do this level of modeling, or this kind of modeling, I guess, leveling sounds too egotistical, you need to be relaxed, you need to enjoy every minute of it, because it's a long, long ride. You're not going to be done in a half an hour and be out at the flying field. This takes a lot of time, takes a big chunk out of your life. But I remember the saying when they were interviewing one of the people at Ducati. They said they build the motorcycles as if time doesn't exist. And I think that's been my mantra, whatever you want to call it, over the years. And we're at the end of the tape, so what I'm going to try to do is tomorrow pull this apart, get this last coat of silver on everything. And we're getting to the point where it's really starting to be an aeroplane, and this gets more and more exciting with each day that goes by. And we're looking forward to the day that we'll have a rack, hopefully a 2-level rack, with the A26, the B25, and we'll be able to, another small part, be able to add. I was watching a show about Clint Eastwood the other night, and they said I never thought of it this way, but Clint Eastwood's body of work. I like Clint Eastwood movies. We just went to see Mystic River the other night while we were looking for something we'd enjoy seeing, and it was an excellent movie. But then they mentioned that it was his body of work over his lifetime that was pretty impressive. Now I think my body of work includes, I don't know what, a lot of videos, I guess, is what it includes. But if you look at each and every modeler that way, and you say, well, what is their body of work like? How many models have they made? How many have been good? How many have been bad? How many mediocre? Kind of changes your perspective on the whole area of modeling, the sport of model aviation. But anyway, we're at the end of the video. More of this stuff is coming next week. And tonight when we're done with this, boy, we're going to need a long session with the trains. We got one of the big train shows coming up this week. And in fact, if I have a minute or two on the end of this video, I'll try to put on a minute or two from the train show. Yeah, I think you'll enjoy it. We have the really nice train shows up here at Edison. And I think there's going to be a minute or two left. Get a little peek at what we do at the train shows. Some of the things are pretty neat. Anyway, we'll see you on the next video.